All right, guys, this is a video that one of my subscribers, content watchers recommended that I make. I think it was Caleb. If I got the user wrong, I apologize. But Caleb has been commenting more than others, so it was probably him. So shout out to you. And this video is about Bitcoin. I've talked about Bitcoin in the past, kind of passe, and I'm probably going to title this video something like Bitcoin is all that matters, because that's pretty much what I believe. If you guys watch my recent kind of schizo rambly videos that I've been criticized for making, I've been talking a lot about geopolitics lately, and MAGA, and the possibility of World War III, all of these things. So if you guys enjoy that schizo rambly content, stick around. My name is Joey. This is the Jigsaw 0097 channel. Please feel free to subscribe if you like, and then also like the video and comment down below. But yeah, all of that aside, other than like a world-ending scenario, this is like what I've always said about Bitcoin. So barring a complete technological, EMP, nuclear holocaust level of catastrophe on a global scale, Bitcoin is all that matters financially. And keep in mind, this is not pertaining to wealth, right? So if you have things like real estate, or if you have like guns, food, ammo, precious metals, things that you're holding on to, right? Like actually holding on to. It doesn't necessarily pertain to those things, because those things are also valuable. What Bitcoin pertains to, and why it is the only thing that matters, is because we live in a fraudulent financial system, to put it quite plainly. We live in a financial system that incentivizes usury. If you guys don't know what usury is, it's a biblical term, essentially. It means lending at an interest, right? So what that essentially means, if you guys know anything about fractional reserve banking, it means that you put $10 in the bank can loan $9 against your 10, which means you really only have $1 in the bank. And that is a very simplistic way of explaining how our financial system works. And so if you think of it that way, it's a complete fraud. And it's actually gotten even worse, because since COVID, I don't even think they do the $1 for every 9 anymore. I think they just print it out of nothing now. Trump is talking about, in his big beautiful bill, raising the debt ceiling. He wants to increase the spending by $5 trillion. I've criticized that in the past, but essentially what that shows is that even the politicians understand that this is a fraud. I remember reading, speaking of Donald Trump, I remember reading financial books when I was younger. Donald Trump, Robert Kiyosaki, these kinds of people basically encouraged you to go into debt, and they bragged about it as if like, oh, you can just borrow other people's money and make a profit off of it. And I remember when I was young and I read those books, I didn't really understand what that meant. Because I didn't understand usury. And it actually took reading about Bitcoin to make me figure all this stuff out, to just kind of bring this back around. So when I learned about Bitcoin and what it represents, it just kind of like clicked in my brain. I've read several books on Bitcoin, but the first book that I read, if you guys want a recommendation, is called The Bitcoin Standard by Saifedean Amos. He's also written a fantastic sequel book to The Bitcoin Standard called The Fiat Standard. I would say if you want to understand Bitcoin, read The Bitcoin Standard, and then if you want to understand why it is the only thing that matters, go ahead and read the Fiat Standard, because that exposes the fraudulent system in much greater detail than I will be able to accomplish in this simple video. But when you read those, you understand that inflation is the number one of inflation, and taxation are the number one ways that the government gets you. And it's designed this way on purpose because they don't ever want you having any level of financial stability. This is also why, I've talked about politics. I won't get too much into that on this, but this is also why we are on a political cycle. This is why the news is always talking about doom and gloom. This is why you have those frauds like Jim Cramer telling you what to invest in, and then the stock goes down to bring up the stock market. This is why the stock market in and of itself is a fraud. Recently, you saw that actually. If you guys could just remember barely, back in June, you saw Elon Musk and Donald Trump get into a little fight, right? A little spat, and that caused Tesla stock to go plummeting down. And so you kind of see the extremely speculative nature of stocks, which is also present in Bitcoin, but to a much more predictable and designed extent, right? Bitcoin mostly has its value because the fiat currency system is the dominant system. So all those things said, what Bitcoin accomplishes, one, it is the hardest money on the planet, right? And again, I'm going to kind of briefly go over these things as best as I can. But if you read the Bitcoin standard, you'll understand a lot more of what I'm saying. Or if you already know about Bitcoin, again, not financial advice. I have to say that as well before I go into this. But it is the hardest money on the planet. What do I mean by that? It means that, unlike gold, unlike ammo, unlike food, like I said before, you can't really create more Bitcoin. And it goes over this in the book. There's only ever going to be 21 million Bitcoins. And I can't remember the current yield, but right now I think every 10 minutes, 3.25 are being mined. That could have halved already last year. And I'll get into the halving in a second here. But essentially, when the 21 million Bitcoins are mined, that's it. It's over. The people that have Bitcoin. The people that don't have Bitcoin don't have Bitcoin. And that's all it is. They're never going to be able to print more Bitcoin. And I'll also kind of get into what they will probably do in the future, which will actually benefit you if you hold Bitcoin. But that's assuming that this whole usury banking system continues the way it is, which, there's crazy things happening in the world right now. So we'll see. This is another big test for Bitcoin. But yeah, so there's only 21 million, but also people that mined Bitcoin in the early days or whatever, if they lost their keys, they lost their Bitcoin. So even though there's 21 million Bitcoin, there's also probably millions, we don't know. There's millions of Bitcoin sitting in wallets right now that will never be accessed because the person lost the keys. They don't remember how to access the Bitcoin. In the early days, I'm guilty of this myself. A lot of people treated Bitcoin like a joke. I remember myself, I was told about Bitcoin in 2013. It's the first time I ever heard about it. And I called it Mario money. So too bad for me. I could have been mining Bitcoin in 2013 and then I wouldn't have to make these videos. No, I'm just kidding. I'd be retired right now, basically is what I'm saying. I'd have multi-millions because you could mine like dozens of Bitcoin an hour back then. You'd have hundreds of Bitcoin in like a day. It was that easy. And again, I'll get into that in a second of why that is the case. So yeah, it's the hardest money. There is lost Bitcoin. So you can think of it like probably by the time this 21 million is mined, which won't happen in our lifetime, by the way, because of the adjustment, that the Bitcoin will probably be mined in like the 2100s or something like that. I can't remember the exact numbers, but all the Bitcoin won't be mined in our lifetime. But the lost Bitcoin, whenever Bitcoin is lost, it increases the scarcity. And that's another factor of Bitcoin, is that Bitcoin's value relies on its scarcity as opposed to the US dollar. So if you look at it like the US dollar is, you could say, a never-ending spigot of water, right? Like when they run out of water, they're like, oh, we can just turn on the tap and turn on more water. But Bitcoin, there's only the pool of water, and that's it. And so as the money becomes more inflationary, the Bitcoin will remain deflationary. And that is why you see the rise in fiat, right? That is why you have seen Bitcoin in 2021, 2022 go from 60,000 to now in 2025, it's over 100,000. I think it was 110 or 109,000 the last time I checked. So you see a crazy increase there because they kept printing money. But also, to get into the other aspects, so Bitcoin is on a difficulty slider. Now, I'm not a crazy math cryptographer guy, so I don't fully understand this completely, but essentially you can think of it like a video game. Imagine a video game that you're playing. We'll just do because it increases every 4 years. So just for simplicity's sake, we'll take a video game example and say you play the video game for every 4 minutes. You could just say something like that, right? So for every 4 minutes that you're playing the video game, the difficulty will slightly increase. So you start the game and you're like invincible. You're like, oh, I'm blowing through all the enemies. This is easy mode. But then, every 4 minutes it ticks up. And then say that you play the game for like a whole day, right? Say you play the game for like 8 hours or something like that. Well, the difficulty has ticked up every 4 minutes for 8 hours. So by then, the game is really hard. And so that's kind of the way to think about the Bitcoin difficulty adjustment, is that every 4 years, and it's tied to political cycles too. This is also quite genius by the creator, who we don't know. That's another positive of Bitcoin. There's no like CEO that they can go after. There's just the whales, but they don't even know who all they are. So Satoshi Nakamoto, the creator, right? He's an alias, we don't know. He designed it so that every 4 years, dictated by political cycles, so that's like literally every election year, right? So the next one is going to be in 2028. The difficulty goes up, and to make it even more scarce, the yield is halved. So, like I said, if it's say that it's 3 Bitcoin per yield, when that's halved, that would be 1.5. And then in 4 more years, you would have 1.5. So eventually, we're going to get to a point where you're going to be mining less than a Bitcoin, but you're going to be paying hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars in electricity to do so. I hope that all makes sense. Again, this is kind of like Bitcoin for beginners and why it is the only thing that matters. So there's that. You've got the hardest, which makes it scarce. You've got the difficulty adjustment. Now we'll talk about the fungibility aspect. I can't remember the exact number, but I think it's 9 digits. So you can break 1 Satoshi down 9 digits. So you can take a Satoshi, by the way, it's like a penny of Bitcoin, the way to think about it. And so you can take a Satoshi and you can break it down 9 digits, which means you can have like 9, you can have like 0.0000009 of a Satoshi. And again, this all matters because if you're new to Bitcoin, this is good news. It means you're not too late, because there will be a point where you won't even have to own an entire Bitcoin. Just holding Bitcoin will matter. And so, again, I apologize that I'm not like the best at explaining this, because a lot of it is very technical, but the way to look at it is that it is extremely fungible. The word fungible means that you can break it down, right? That's another aspect of sound money, is that you can break it down into micro units. And so you have that. You have the security and the anonymity. I hope I'm saying that the right way, but you basically can be your own bank. And so when you start getting into Bitcoin, a lot of people do this. They start with a soft wallet. If you guys don't know what that is, like when you set up, like say a Coinbase account, you create something called a soft wallet. And the soft wallet is a wallet that exists on the internet, which means that it's not fully secure. And so really, actually what happens, a lot of people go on Coinbase and they start buying Bitcoin and they leave it on the exchange, which is even less secure than the soft wallet. Because if anyone hacks the exchange, then you'll just lose all your Bitcoin. There's a possibility you just get wiped out, and there's no way to get it back. So there's that level. There's level 2, which is the soft wallet. That's what happens when people start getting a little bit more serious, you know. It happened to me when around the time I had about 5,000 in there. I was like, okay, I need to like store this. That's when you also start learning about the ultimate goal, which is the hard wallet. And so what the hard wallet is it's a USB drive. I use the Ledger. It's the Ledger Nano X. That's the one I use. There's a lot better ones now, actually. There's ones that are made just for storing Bitcoin, which is, if you're serious about Bitcoin, you'll kind of know as well that all the other cryptos are just worthless. They're just shit coins, right? There's literally a phrase, there's Bitcoin and then there's a million other shit coins, right? So like Bitcoin is the one ring to rule them all. That's the way to think about it. And so, yeah, there's literally hardware wallets now that are built to just store Bitcoin, which you guys could look into those. But yeah, I use the Ledger Nano X. I've had no problems with it. You guys can look into that one as well. It does have some features that I don't use where you can like back it up online. You know, these are for normies, because what I was saying is that what Bitcoin encourages is that you're your own self-custody. So it literally cuts out the middleman, which means the bank. You are the only one. So like if you lose your phrase, if you lose access to your Bitcoin, it's over. That's the way you have to think about it. But that also means that you have ultimate freedom to use it whenever you want. You don't have to rely on banks, you know, working hours. You can transact Bitcoin anytime somebody wants to transact Bitcoin. My personal strategy is I don't transact in Bitcoin. I just am holding it for the future, which is another strategy of Bitcoin. You can hold it as if you would a stock, and then unlike a stock, because of what I explained, the difficulty cycles and the scarcity adjustment, also people continuing to lose their Bitcoin over time. It's again, not financial advice. I'm saying this my own personal biased opinion. It is guaranteed that you will get some kind of return every 4 years, 4 to 5 years. That has been my experience. I've been in Bitcoin briefly since about 2017. I didn't get serious about it till 2021, so kind of late, but I've kind of experienced the cycles when it was just a little bit. Like I really didn't have a lot. I only had like a couple hundred in like 2017 through up to 2021. So I experienced the cycles, but I never really took it seriously. But I've been through, let's see, I've been through about 2 cycles now, you could say. 2016 would have been the one before. So yeah, like 2020 was a cycle, and then 2024 was a cycle. And this year especially, 2025, I witnessed it full stop, guys. You saw when Donald Trump was elected, it immediately shot up. And Bitcoin kind of goes like this. I'll try to like show you guys. Stocks go like this, you know, and then they like, sometimes they just never come back. Bitcoin always has gone like this. It'll go down, but then it will go up, and then it will go down, and then it will go up. But when it goes up, say that it's right here, it's always going to be higher than it was here, if that makes sense. And then here was higher than here. So there, you have to kind of ride the wave. This is something that does scare a lot of first-time Bitcoin investors. And it's getting better over time because, like I said, the Bitcoin is becoming more scarce. But it will kind of freak you out, especially as you have more and more money invested, right? When you get over like the 10 grand mark in Bitcoin, that's when you really start paying attention. But the key is that you just always have to remember the previous low the previous high compared to the new low, which is wild. When you get into these, you'll see what I'm saying. The previous high sometimes will be lower than the new low, if that makes sense. So say like the previous high was like 86,000, and then the new low is like 90,000 after it hits 100,000. Just like use that as an example. Well, the new low is still higher than the previous high. So it's like, if you think of it that way, you're really not losing. You're just kind of waiting it out. It's like the way that money should be. It's how stupid this really is. Like why Bitcoin even needs to exist. It's because the way money should work is that you should be able to invest it in something, Really, you should just be able to save money. That's how it used to work. You could just put it in a bank and gain a modest interest, and you didn't get destroyed by inflation. But, you know, this was way before the Federal Reserve. This is before all of this. Well before our time, guys. 100+ years ago, you know. We've never existed in that world. So things like Bitcoin become necessary, right? This is why the stock market even exists, is because the stock market was created really by elites. It's kind of a Ponzi scheme, because people needed to put their money somewhere, right? You buy your house. This is how it used to work. You buy your house. You're like, okay, I have my house. I'm paying it off every month. A lot of people would overpay, right? But it's like, what do I do with all this extra money? Well, you know, like I said, you can't really store it in cash. You can keep some in cash, but if you keep all your wealth in cash, you're going to lose money over time. So this is what Bitcoin was designed for, if you want to think of it that way. And another thing is, it was also designed to replace the banks, because I don't do this myself, but there are a lot of people that transact in Bitcoin now, and they have for a while. I'm not confident enough and techie enough to go down that road. My strategy is just to kind of hold it. You know, I always joke with people. They're always like, when will you sell it? It's like, well, when I can just pay off a house completely, that's when I'll probably sell it. You know, when I can look at a house, like a modest house, and I'd be like, yeah, I'm going to stay here for the rest of my life, that is when I will sell my Bitcoin. So, yeah, I've gone through all the technicalities, right? We're 20 minutes in. I appreciate this. If you guys are watching it, again, this video is made on request, but it is a very good topic, because Bitcoin truly is, at least financially, the only thing that matters. So if you're liking this video, please subscribe. Please like the video. Comment down below. Appreciate it. Because now I'm going to finish the video up with the ramifications of Bitcoin. Maybe some bold predictions I'll get into here. I won't go too hard, but the ramifications of Bitcoin going forward, what this will mean for you if you are a Bitcoin holder, and what the financial landscape will probably look like. Because the thing about Bitcoin is, whether they keep printing or stop printing, Bitcoin will still do things. So I'll kind of go over that now. So say that the government continues to print into oblivion, right? Trump gets his big beautiful bill in, and then 2028 happens, and like JD Vance or someone gets in, and then they pass more resolutions. We'll just assume inflation keeps going up. And then say in like 2030 another crisis happens, right? Say that they try to do another pandemic or whatever, right? Just another crisis, can be anything. Well, they're going to keep printing money. That's the key takeaway of all these things. No matter what the government does, they are in such a state now where the deficit alone is like unaffordable. So the only thing that they can do is continue to print money against their fiat money, and that increases inflation. So the wages are going to remain stagnant, unfortunately. I don't see this changing. So the only way to guarantee that your wages will increase over time is to put it into Bitcoin. Again, not financial advice. This is just my analysis. Putting it into Bitcoin, like I said, every 4 to 5 years guarantees you some kind of return on your investment. So the strategy that I like to use is I hold cash that I need to survive, and then literally the rest of it goes into Bitcoin, essentially. That has been my strategy, my hardcore strategy since 2021, and it has paid off. I've probably doubled what I put in now. You know, if you go back to 2017, it could be more like 60%, but again, I didn't have as much in. But I have now consolidated all of my Bitcoin into one area. So that is another thing that you can do over time. If you've got Bitcoin all over the place, like I said, try to get it into a hard wallet. There's an even more awesome thing you can do now is, once you get it into a hard wallet, you can get these little metal plate things where you can actually engrave your 12 or 24, whatever passphrase you've chosen, right? Whatever level of security you've chosen. You can actually engrave it into like a physical metal object, which can withstand fire. So if your house burns down, right? As long as you have that code, it doesn't matter if you lose your wallet, you'll still have access to your Bitcoin. So there's that. The government will continue printing money. So there's that. Bitcoin is a hedge against that. But the other thing, this is kind of the more advanced thing I wanted to get into, and there's another really great book called Layered Money by Nick Bhatia. Very good book to read if you want to understand the possible, very likely future of Bitcoin, is that what's going to eventually happen is that this financial crisis is going to get so out of hand that the banks are going to have to start backing themselves on Bitcoin. Another thing that is likely to happen is that the government will print bonds. That's the current way the government funds itself, if you guys don't know. They create bonds and they sell them to other countries, and this is how we're allowed to like print money forever. It's because there's a lot of factors, but like Nixon took us off the gold standard. He put us on the petrodollar, which is backed by oil, but it allows the government to be the dominant dollar force in the world. Now again, that might change because, you know, Russia kind of backed out. BRICS is becoming a thing. These are topics for another day, but assuming that the US dollar keeps its hegemony, which is likely, it is more likely than not that the US dollar will still be worth more than most dollars in the world. Well, that's just good news for Bitcoin. That just means that if you keep buying it and holding it, as inflation goes up, your Bitcoin will go up, and then, like I said, every 4 years, you're pretty much guaranteed a return because of the scarcity and difficulty adjustments. So there's like multiple factors built into Bitcoin that make it go up and make it become more scarce. And that is the key. It is not inflationary, it is deflationary. And so as governments print bonds, as governments print more money, as governments move into Bitcoin. Now, Trump himself last year, he went to the Bitcoin. Now, he could have been just pandering for votes, whatever. He went to Bitcoin conferences and he talked about how the government is going to start a Bitcoin reserve. Now, this is again good for you because I've always said, I think that when you see Bitcoin, this is when it could possibly be too late to buy Bitcoin, just my opinion. But there's going to become a point where the government and like very serious actors start getting into this asset. And that's when it's going to skyrocket into the millions. I think it was Sailor. I always forget his name because there's so many, his first name because there's so many Sailors. I want to say like Steven Sailor, but that could be wrong. Michael Sailor, it could be Michael Sailor. He had this video where he showed a model where basically by the year 2035, one Bitcoin will be worth 13 million. Now again, this is just a speculation, but it kind of gives you an idea of the rapid increase of returns that this can possibly yield, right? 13 million for one Bitcoin, guys. That's absolutely insane. Now again, as the government prints more money, 13 million could not be that much in 10 years. We don't know because, you know, if you guys studied Weimar Germany, if they print the money to oblivion, $1 million becomes worth like $1. So again, this is all kind of like speculative, but there is still a return. That is the big thing about Bitcoin, is to think about, since you have to like to use like a Julius Evola metaphor, if you guys know who that is. He wrote a book called Ride the Tiger, a really good book that you should all read as well. But that's kind of what the book is about, is like riding the tiger of modernity. Think of it like that, right? Like we all are forced to ride the tiger right now, like because we don't have control of the Fed, we don't have control of the stock market, we don't have control of, you know, the money printing, we don't have control of anything really, the economy, you know, gas, eggs, whatever, food. The only thing we have control of is the money that we make and where we put that money that we make. So if you're gonna have to ride the tiger anyway, that's like the best argument for Bitcoin. If you're gonna ride it anyway, just put it in something that will ride it with you. It's kind of the way I think about it. It'll ride it with you, but it will help you in the long run, right? So that is another thing. And then to finally end out, I did sidetrack a little, so I apologize, but the book Layered Money talks about what will happen is that Bitcoin will become so scarce that individuals that hold Bitcoin, this is just a theory, right? But I think it's pretty sound if you know how banks work now. They're going to come to people that have Bitcoin, or banks or someone is going to come to Bitcoin, and they're going to pay you a percentage to print against it. Now, this goes back to the very beginning of the video, right? Fractional reserve banking. Instead of loaning $9 to the 10, they're going to loan dollars to the Bitcoin, we'll just say. I don't know the amount, but think of it like that. Bitcoin will become a layered asset, which means that you have the base Bitcoin. Think of it like gold, right? This is how the whole monetary system in the United States started. You had gold, and then they created dollar certificates backed on gold. So you're going to have Bitcoin, and then you're going to have a layer above it, certificates off of Bitcoin, yada, yada, yada. They do this on the stock market as well. You can get silver certificates, you can get gold certificates. There will be Bitcoin certificates. And the way that I know this is because the boomers ETFs, right? Their ETFs, their 401ks, their retirement stocks in the last couple years have been now including Bitcoin as part of their investment strategy. So it's already entered the normie investment vehicle, you could say. And so, again, all of that said, good for Bitcoin. So, what are the negatives of Bitcoin? I'll briefly go into them. Well, the negatives of Bitcoin that I've heard is that it could all be a psyop itself, right? If somebody has said that, who knows? The CIA controls it, whatever. I don't believe that because I don't think our government's competent enough for something like that. Also, it's cryptography. It's like they've thrown quantum computing at this and it can't hack into it. So, I don't know how there'd just be an off switch for something like this. Another thing about Bitcoin is that it's based on nodes. So there's nodes like all over the world that Bitcoin taps into. I'm a node, good example. The only way to destroy Bitcoin is you'd have to destroy every node, which means everyone that has Bitcoin would have to lose all their Bitcoin simultaneously. That would take a massive catastrophe. Like I said, you'd have to enter like an EMP that takes out the whole world, a meteor hits the earth, something crazy would have to happen, where I always say to that criticism, if that happens, Bitcoin isn't relevant anyway, because you have much more important things to worry about at that point. And then, yeah, that's kind of the other negative, I guess you could say, because I don't have a lot of negatives. The other negative, this is more for like the normies, is that you're responsible for your funds. So if you lose your keys, if you don't take care of your asset, you will lose it. And if you lose it, then it's gone. There's no bank to call, there's no recovery phrase, there's no nothing. People have been locked out of their wallets. Some of the older wallets, they gave you 3 chances to guess, and if you missed 3, you were out forever. And I've heard stories of people that they guessed 3 times, they got it wrong 3 times, and like I said, there is just Bitcoin that is gone. It's gone to the void now. And so, yeah, the only way that I can see them making more out of it is, again, the whole layered aspect that will probably come in the future when the government starts backing bonds on it. They start putting it in their reserves, right? This is also assuming the government probably goes to some kind of CBDC in the future. That is a central bank digital currency. That is another possibility. But again, either way, it is good for Bitcoin, because if you hold Bitcoin, you're going to see some kind of return. So yeah, that's kind of the video. I hope there's so much more to go into. This could be like a 3-hour video. So if you guys want to hear more about Bitcoin, just ask some specific questions. I can definitely answer them. Other than transacting, I'm not like the best in that, but there's also another YouTube channel that really helped me. It's called Crypto Dad. I know it sounds really cringe, but he's really good. He's good at like explaining almost everything, and not just Bitcoin. He goes into all of crypto. So I hope that this video was helpful. But the reason Bitcoin is so important and why it is the only thing that matters is because we have a financial system that is completely fraudulent, based completely on usury. It does not care about you. They will print money. We saw this in 2020. They will wipe your wealth out within the click of a button, right? They will just shut the economy down. They will do something to just wipe you out. We saw small businesses just gone. Businesses that have probably been around for 50 plus years, gone. I lost my job. I got outsourced to the Philippines. Gone. A job of 7 years, gone. See? This is what I mean. So the Bitcoin, though, is not gone. I still have that. And that's the way to think about it. The government can do anything they want with this economy. Job level, stock market level, money level, bank level, any level. Maybe someday they will get a hold of Bitcoin, but not really. They can't get a hold of all of it. They'd have to have some kind of, again, quantum computing. That's like insane levels of computation. That can't even get through to it. They'd have to develop like a quantum computing AI, something we can't even imagine, which I don't even think is possible. So this is just simple cryptography, simple math. So I hope all of that makes sense. Again, it's these videos tend to be a little rambles, so sorry not sorry. That's kind of my style here, but hope you guys learned something. Hope you guys enjoyed this content. Like I said, like the video, subscribe if you're new, comment down below if you have any questions, any things you want me to address on Bitcoin. I'd be happy to try to tackle it. But with that said, guys, I will talk to you on the next one.